Hello, and welcome to the Psychic Stories podcast, encouraging conversations about mental health. Today I'm speaking to Carly Victoria. Carly is a life coach, writer, and founder of The Journal Life, and her mission is to inspire and help women who feel lost, stuck, or overwhelmed in life to find their authentic selves and create a life they truly love. Hello, Carly.
Hello, Matt.
How are you? Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. So the goal of today is to have an open and honest conversation about your mental health journey, to get some insight into the tools and techniques that have helped you and are available and accessible to other people. And by discussing your journey, we hope to share and normalize conversations about mental health, as often people are not alone in these experiences. Sound good?
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. So over to you. We'd love to hear your mental health story and journey.
So mine is quite a general one. I haven't had any kind of major struggles in my life with mental health, but over the last probably few years, I definitely started to find myself feeling a lot more anxious, a lot more overwhelmed, and definitely in my 9 to 5, which I've recently left.
Mm-hmm. Which is scary.
Yeah, but I was finding myself getting a lot more stressed. So I worked in crisis management, emergency planning, quite a kind of high intensity environment.
Yeah.
And it would kind of come in peaks as well. So you'd kind of have nothing for ages, and then you'd be thrown into some sort of crisis, and you'd be doing really long hours and that kind of stuff. So that's probably where I've definitely found the most stress in my life was when I was doing that.
Yeah.
But on a much more kind of general level, anxiety and overwhelm is probably something that I still have here and there now, but definitely was more prevalent kind of when I was working in what I'd probably describe as a job that I enjoyed and I liked, but probably didn't align with me as much as it should have done. And I think definitely identifying over the course of about 4 years, much more towards the end, that actually this job probably wasn't right for me and it wasn't right for my energy. And that's why I was starting to feel those kind of emotions and definitely starting to struggle with that kind of mental health area, if you like.
Have you, and before that point, had you ever felt, that those feelings of being anxious or overwhelmed when you were growing up, or is it something that just kind of, you could really pinpoint that it was the work?
Yeah, probably not so much. Probably like when I was younger, there was probably a little bit of anxiety, but I don't think I knew what it was then. Probably a bit of anxiety around, the usual when you're at school kind of friendship groups and, people being mean or whatever, but you never really know what it is then. You just kind of shrug it off and get on with it.
Yeah, and those playground, whatever it is, like being mean, bullying, whatever, like they can have quite an impact. And it's amazing how they sometimes. That's why I always ask about kind of like at school, because sometimes they can rear their heads, like when you're in your 20s and 30s and you're going through these big life transitions, like you are in terms of a job.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's probably the only thing that stands out is probably back at school, like definitely like the playground stuff, and and then maybe in uni I was probably stressed, but again you just kind of deal with that. But I would say much more prevalent in the last kind of 3 to 4 years where I was in that kind of high intensity kind of work environment. That would definitely be where it reared its head, and I was aware of it, and I was like, oh my God, what is, especially when you start getting very anxious, you're like, what is this kind of thing?
It's quite scary, isn't it?
Yeah, and you don't really know when it comes to you for kind of the first time properly. You're like, I don't really even know what this is. Is this anxiety? What is this feeling? What is this emotion? And it is, and then that kind of leads to the overwhelm. That definitely, and it kind of has a knock-on effect. And then you start, definitely with me, when I get overwhelmed, my brain just overloads, and I'm just like all of this stuff going on, and being asked to do things that maybe are way out of your comfort zone in terms of ability, and you just kind of max out, really, is the best way I can probably describe it. And you kind of come home and you've got no energy to do anything because you've been so consumed by that. I mean, I'm painting a really bad picture of my previous job. I really enjoyed my job,
Yeah.
but it definitely came with some of the kind of mental health issues, if you like.
But it sounds like what you're saying, like that, despite you enjoying it, and enjoying might have been the work, maybe, you know, the high stress environment might have been enjoyable to some extent, and your colleagues at the same time, like when it doesn't necessarily connect with what your kind of underlying kind of motivations and passions are, it sometimes doesn't matter how you know, how interesting you find, you know, the work or the people. If something's just not right, that's when things can really start. It's almost like listening to your gut, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I kind of discovered life coaching about 5 years ago, and it was potentially a route that I was going to go down before I landed in this job. And the universe had a different plan for me. I landed this really good job, and so I went down that path. And I was there, just about 4.5 years, and probably maybe the middle of last year, I was like, I think there's more for me out there. I'm not a lifer. There's definitely people in that place of work that were lifers, and that's absolutely fine. But for me, I was like, there's more out there for me. And then I started thinking about, okay, how could I, you know, what would that look like? And that was kind of where I looked at the audience I'd grown on Instagram, and I was like, how could I pivot this, or how can I use this to do something that I really enjoy and passionate about, and to help people, because that was kind of what I wanted to do. And then kind of end up going down that route of, oh, hold on a minute, I did find life coaching a few years back, why don't I look into that again? And that was kind of when I started realizing that actually I've been helping people all my life in some way, shape or form, whether it's friends or family. I'm always that one that people come to, and I just started to fall into place and felt a lot more aligned. However, I still was working, and I still had to battle with the kind of balancing both. But and then cue even more overwhelmed, because you're trying to create a business and work.
And it's interesting you say, like, with your Instagram, because previously, so you built up your Instagram following, which you are very well followed, but it originally wasn't for business purposes, wasn't it? It was for, like, I think what you were saying, it was talking about journaling. And it was something, well, effectively there was a passion for you. So in some respects, you're saying, you know, rather than saying, oh, how can I use this for a business? It's almost like, okay, I'm passionate about this. How can I then start to use this and actually, you know, try to live the life of, okay, not journaling, but life coach, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely. And it was like, how can I use my passion of journaling when it comes to life coaching? And that was something that I spent quite a lot of time really thinking about. How can I link the two? And there's definitely a link there. And with all my clients, I always encourage them so much to journal, and I also provide them with kind of bespoke journaling prompts. And I've just recently launched a course. This week is the first week, and it's like a guided journaling course. So it's, you know, the people that are on the course, they get a workbook, and it talks them through a load of different topics. And then at the end, they have exercises and prompts to do, because I just feel like you can discover so much through writing, and it's a really transformational tool.
And talking about that, so your passion at that time was journaling. Like, can you tell us a bit more about that in terms of what it meant to you personally, like in the context of your own mental health? Because, you know, at Sidekick, we talk about journaling a lot, and there's loads of research on how the benefits of it. And I think it'd be great to hear from, frankly, a pro.
Yeah, so I mean, you've said it there, kind of, is so powerful, is so much research around kind of what in a lot of the research, they refer to it as expressive writing. Just using the journal as kind of a way to offload everything that's in your mind. There's a really good picture on Instagram that I found recently. I'll send it to you.
Please do, yeah.
Yeah, and it's basically a girl with lots of stuff going on in her head, and then basically it's all on the paper, because you're decluttering your mind, and you're getting it from in here onto the paper, and it enables you to really kind of see things from a different perspective. It enables you to kind of prioritize what's going on in your mind, especially when it comes to the overwhelm side of things. I try to do like a brain dump, and I just get everything out, and then I'll go, right, what have I actually got to do, and what's not so important, and how do I prioritize what needs to be done. So I use it in so many different ways, and there's definitely the kind of there's loads of different types of journaling. I very much am a fan of a pen and notebook, like just getting it out there. But that being said, I'll use it for lists, I'll use it for brain dumps, I'll doodle, I'll just get everything out of my mind and onto the paper. And then I just find it's very, very cathartic as well. Yeah. It's like an emotional release, you get it out. And actually sometimes when you put things on paper, it kind of, you realize something maybe you made a big deal out of isn't as bad as it seems. But I think it's still important to allow yourself that kind of time and space when you do feel something is big, to acknowledge that the way you're feeling, allow yourself to feel that way, but then try and rationalize or, create a mechanism to kind of find your way out of how you're feeling, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I find it interesting when you try and break down the journey process, because it's not like an objective conversation like we're having now, where you're telling me a story and I'm kind of trying to understand it from my perspective and listen to you. You're writing out a thought which is in your head, but then you're just writing it in words. But for some reason, that process seems to allow you to look at the words and go, oh, hold on, that's not quite right. And it's something you can't actually do in your head.
No.
Which for me, it sounds mysterious, quite mythical almost.
And it's funny you say that, because I was just about to say it's almost like magical when you write. It's like the stuff's coming out of your head, down your arm and onto the page, and it's literally coming out of your body. And all
it
of
is.
that, yeah, and all of that energy that it's taking up, and all of that space that it's taking up within you, it's coming out of the pen and it's being released from you. So it is very I do say it's magical.
But I completely agree with you, and I think a lot of people hearing it, magical, metaphysical. I mean, my view is try it, and I think you summed it up with that cathartic effect, like, and the research and the science behind it. Like, there is something that, I mean, perhaps art was an expression of that back in cave person times, where those thoughts were being put on cave walls. Perhaps there was a well-being element to it as well. You don't know, but there's something very powerful for humans to be able to put pen to paper. And I think you summarize it perfectly. And how did it help you in your own mental health context?
I think, like everything I've kind of said, just to put things into perspective, just to rationalize things. But actually, like, for example, during lockdown, the first lockdown, I was on furlough from my job. I didn't know what was going on with my job, and it was very uncertain time. I was able to spend the whole of furlough and lockdown working on my kind of new business, if you like, but at the same time it was really uncertain of what was going to happen with my job. Was I going to be going back, or was I not, or whatever. So journaling during lockdown was so important for me, and I was probably doing it twice a day, because I just felt like my brain was consumed with this uncertainty of what was going on. Didn't know, kind of part of me was like, I don't really want to go back to this job, because I've been able to spend all this time working on my business, and I'm so passionate and I'm enjoying it, and and it's giving me life, if you like. But then there was part of me that's like, but I probably do need to go back to a job because it's safe and secure and it's money and all of that. It was this constant toing and froing in my mind. So journaling, especially in that period, and any period where I'm having this kind of overwhelm, is probably the best thing how I can describe, is just putting that pen to paper and just offloading. And another thing I always say, and it's in quite a lot of my ebooks and stuff like that I produce, is journaling gives you the ability to offload onto the page without any opinions coming back at you. So like, if I have a conversation with a family member about the way I'm feeling, then they're going to go, oh, well, maybe you should try this, maybe you should try that. But sometimes I don't want that.
Yeah.
So having you're talking to someone, but you're not.
Yeah, and I think that was what I was trying. That's what I was trying to articulate when you're saying actually it's not an objective conversation, is it? Like, and it's funny you should say that. Like my wife and I, if my wife doesn't comes to me with a problem, and we in our relationship, I will often say, okay, I want to find a solution. I'll find a solution. But now I come up and she goes, I've got a problem, and I do not want your solution. I don't want a solution. I just need to talk. And actually, that really works because you just sit there and listen.
Yeah.
And you don't want, but then the other side is like, right, I have a problem. I'd love an attempt of a solution. And I think when you're having those conversations, you can almost treat it like journaling. You can say you're defining the parameters of your conversation. You're saying, look, I want to talk, but I don't want you to talk. But that's okay.
Pretty much. And to be honest, that's the big thing around coaching and life coaching is you're providing that safe space for someone to just talk at you. Yeah. And as a coach, I don't make any suggestions or give my clients advice. I ask them questions and they usually find the answers within, because actually we have all got the answers within us. Yeah. And one of the amazing things about kind of having a life coach is having that person there to just listen, because like you say, how often do you actually sit down with someone and just speak to them and they listen, rather than them butting in halfway to say, well, why don't you do this, or oh, have you thought about this? And sometimes we don't want that, like you say, and that's actually a really interesting technique that you and your wife have developed. That
yes, I think my wife imposed it on me because I talk too much. Fair enough.
It's a good one, because sometimes I'll say to my boyfriend and they'll say, this is a rhetorical question, I don't want an answer, like
exactly.
And sometimes, and that's come over time, where he's given me an answer and I'm like, it's a rhetorical question, I don't want an answer.
so with life coaching as well, because life coaching, actually it'd be quite interesting to understand the history of life coaching, because from my perspective, I don't know much about it. I mean, I have actually seen a life coach, but has it just come up in the last kind of 10 years or so, or has there always been the element of coaching in different ways? It seems to be much more prominent now.
Yeah, I think there's always been, I mean, I'm no pro on the history, but I'm currently studying for a master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology. So I am learning quite a lot about kind of its roots. But I think there's always been this element of coaching. There's definitely, then there's also, it's also important to understand that there's a difference between counselling, therapy, coaching, mentoring. I think quite a lot of people don't realise that, and they bundle everything together. But there's definitely, when it comes to kind of coaching, I think the term is, if you're a life coach, you're kind of bagged into this kind of soul guide territory, and then you have managerial, so people that deal with kind of leadership coaching, more like going into corporate businesses and doing that kind of stuff. There's a number of different, I can't remember off the top of my head the different areas, but life coaching is definitely something that comes down to like helping people with their life essentially. But I think coaching's been around for a long time, but it's, I think over, like you say, probably even over the last decade or so, people have kind of niched it down into specific areas. And someone could listen to this and go, that's not right at all. But that's my take on it.
but I think, I mean, that's fair. And I think what'd be really interesting is, like, you said when people bundle it together, because I mean, to be honest, like, I think, I could probably tell the difference between a psychiatrist and a life coach, because I'm like, right, psychiatrist, like mental ill health, life coach, okay, might be a bit more supportive, maybe not too much intervention, medication, etc. When it comes to kind of counselors, executive coaches, life coaches, I think I'd struggle. So from your perspective, why should someone, if they wanted to, go to a life coach?
So someone would go to a life coach if they literally need help in many different areas of their life, but like you say, it's not, you've not been sent to them by a doctor, or it's not like a medical diagnosis and they need, that would be like a psychiatrist, or even counselling as well. Counselling is very much around taking someone from, this is the analogy we use in my studies, counselling is very much taking someone from a minus, if they're in the minus numbers, so they're not feeling very good, let's just say they're at a -10, and you're taking them back up to 0. Life coaching and coaching as a whole is taking someone from a 0 to a 10.
Right. That's a really nice way to put it. Really like that.
So counselling and therapy is very much, they will look at your past and they will look at why kind of you maybe are acting in the way you're acting or behaving in certain ways. And they're working on kind of building you back from that -10 up to 0. Life coaching is saying, right, I'm coaching in general, not just life coaching. Okay, we're not going to look at your past. We're going to look at how we can move you forward. And what we tend to do with life coaching is, if you came to see me, I would say to you, okay, right, what do you want to achieve from coaching? And you'll have like an overarching goal. And then we would say, okay, we're going to work together for 10 sessions and we're going to chip away at each session. We're going to chip away at that overarching goal. And by the end of the 10 sessions, hopefully you'll be there.
And don't forget homework.
Yes.
Because I that's one thing I wasn't expecting with life coaching, because you realize that the life coach like yourself is a facilitator. The answers are in me, you're helping me get there. So my expectation to come to you for answers is completely wrong. I've got to do the hard work, and those hard work doesn't take place in the hour in which I see you. That frames the next week of hard work.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So it's asking the thought-provoking questions and providing you with that safe space to really kind of unlock the power within you, and realize that actually you've got everything you need within you. It's just, and sometimes it's putting a different spin on things and having a different set of eyes on your situation and asking those questions that you maybe are either too scared to ask yourself or haven't even thought about asking yourself. So
on that note, on those difficult questions, and if I may ask, please say no. If you were talking to your younger self and you had hired yourself as an experienced life coach, what tough questions would you have you asked yourself, and that would have taken you through to this journey of like aspiration?
Good question.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I just suddenly thought, I was just like, what would I ask myself?
I think it's definitely dependent on the overarching goal that the person has. So obviously the questions are definitely influenced by where that person wants to be. And
it forces them to choose a direction, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, potentially, yeah. And I don't know, what would I ask my younger self? Yeah, kind of guess what are, yeah. And I'm going to take what you just said. What are your aspirations in life? Where do you see yourself? I don't think when I was probably in my teens, I probably never thought to myself, oh, what am I going to do? Where do I see myself when I'm 30? Like, I don't think I even ever asked myself that, because I've done so much growth in the last few years, but I was definitely on that kind of, I just follow societal norms train when I was younger.
Yeah, I hear you there.
Yeah, so I've probably in the last year, I've definitely come to realize that we are in control of our lives. We are, we create our reality. We're the author of our own lives, all of that kind of stuff. And a lot of people, I don't think, realize that, and they just follow the norms of go to school, go to uni, or go get a job or whatever. So yeah, I think I probably would have asked, and to my younger self would have asked, what are my aspirations and where do I see myself at the age of 30? Because I guarantee it probably would have been a very different answer to where I am.
And do you think, like, because often like life coaches, or you would see a life coach maybe at a difficult life transition, maybe in your kind of, mid to late 20s, 30s. Would you ever, say that, people leaving school or at school could have life coaches? Because it seems to me almost actually that's where a lot of life coaching would happen naturally by teachers. And would people benefit from actually, thinking about these kind of questions, these thought-provoking questions a little bit earlier?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think there is a space for that. I'm not actually sure. I think there probably is life coaches who specialize in the kind of younger generations, but I couldn't agree more. I think there is this kind of path that you're expected to follow, you're expected to go and get a real job, if you like. But then there is this whole new generation of people working online, being influencers, being YouTube. You know, it's a job at the end of the day, but
well, it earns money, right? It earns good money.
Very good money. But then your parents might not see that, so it's like having. Yeah, definitely think that there is a space for younger generations to be asked those questions, and I don't think it probably happens actually. So yeah,
and I think when you talk about those kind of like parental or your own expectations, that's a really big part of this, isn't it? Like it's very different, you know. It often, I certainly found that kind of key moments in my life, especially when you're kind of 17, 18, 19, 20, really it's when your expectations come crashing to reality. Like my expectations of life were here, but the reality is that not they're here, they're lower, they're just way over there. And I wish in some respects that the expectations that I had even conditioned myself for were probably a bit more accurate. But it does seem that there's a lot of people where a lot of these expectations are quite disillusioned.
Yeah.
But I don't really know where that comes from. Do you see that a lot?
Yeah, I think just picking up on your point there is there's a huge lack in the kind of college space, if you like, or sixth form in the UK and college space, to be taught about mental health and to be taught about this is actually what life looks like. Not what this kind of expectation that you've created. And I think that there's definitely a lack of like life skills. Like there should be like a life skills lesson that you learn when you hit like 16 maybe, for those last 2 years of education. And I think that would prepare kids, or you know, adolescents if you like, so much more to go into this big wide world. Because I know for, you know, everyone just went to uni when I left school. That was just the thing you did. Even if you didn't
completely agree
what you wanted to do, you went to uni. Like, and
actually, why did you go to uni? Was it for, I mean, and I'll be very honest, was it for the piss up for the first year?
I went because I didn't want to work in an office. I don't want to go just straight and be like, I don't know, I don't even know what kind of job. I just was like, I don't want to work in an office from now until till like the rest of my years. But I went to uni because I wanted to be a detective. I went and I did criminology and
fascinating.
And I'd watched. Have you seen the film Taking Lives?
Yes.
Yeah, Angelina Jolie in that film.
Yeah,
that's what I want to do.
Okay, but actually, and what I find amazing is because, like, you know, you may think of that, you know, perhaps maybe being, you know, compared to what your path, unrealistic expectations. But actually, if you think about what you're doing as a life coach, you can actually see, you've probably taken a lot of that into what you're doing. And actually those dreams, like you said, have been more fulfilled because, you know, those passions were there from when you were a kid.
Yeah, and I was very much interested in criminal profiling and all of that kind of stuff. So I've always been interested in how people act and why. So rather than dealing with criminals, I'm dealing with lovely people.
And but also at the same time, the people that you're dealing with, they are lovely. I'm sure there are people that you deal with who are lovely, but if they went down the wrong path, they could be criminals. What you're, in some respects, what you're doing is supporting going from zero through to whatever positive. And if people are on zero and they could go negative, then actually you're nudging them across that, you know, nudging them on a different path, which hopefully should be more positive and in line with what their passions are.
And it's helping people to realize what they're aligned with and what their passions are, because I think, as we've been talking about, a lot of people don't realize, they don't sit there and give that space any thought, because they just kind of bumble along following the norms, and we all do it. It's only when and I've been reading a really good book at the moment called Authenticity, because I'm a big fan of being authentic, and the guy, I think the guy's name is Stephen Joseph, and he talks about most people have to experience some life-changing event or a big event before they kind of, click and go, hold on a minute, this is not what I want to do with my life. There's a small percentage of people who embark on that journey without having the big event. or having the trauma or whatever. But most of us are faced with something before we go, hang on, I'm not happy or whatever. So I think that's a really interesting concept, and I think a lot of people unfortunately won't experience that click, and they will just maybe think that they're happy doing what they're doing, but they're not. And it takes a lot to realize that you are at a point now where you need to ask for help, or you need to kind of take that step to make a change in your life.
And it's hard because that's the hard route. Like, there is an easy route. The conveyor belt is very easy. And just picking up on what you said earlier about people in school, those life skills, like, you know, I think that the schools do provide life skills, but do the kids actually listen? Do they care?
True.
And that's a question. And, you know, I remember age 15, 16, did I care about it? No, of course didn't. Like, and, you know, I'm not sure, you know, did you? How can we make people care about it? And like you said, like that, you know, living your authentic self, the book you're reading is, but when people are faced with a real life event, that's what makes you care. You know, I remember my real life event was losing my job. I was like, how on earth am I going to pay my rent? Yeah. And then suddenly all of these questions start spiraling. It's like, okay, how am I going to pay my rent? What am I going to do? What do I like doing? Shall I do this? Okay, let's try this route. And suddenly, actually, it's weird. Like, that life event hits you, but then everything seems to kind of, almost like your mind kicks into gear, and suddenly your focus comes, and you become much more focused on what you want based on what you know about yourself.
Yeah, and I have a question for you, I guess. I mean,
please.
Although that would have been a really hard experience, but once you realized what you were passionate about, did things start to fall into place?
Yeah, it was. And it's amazing. Like, I jumped ship from the city. So I was a chartered accountant on the conveyor belt. I jumped ship week after qualifying into the unknown. People were like, that must have been terrifying. But to me, it was the easiest decision I ever made.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, right, I'd gone through a process. I was like, okay, you know, I got to a process where I didn't believe myself to I believe in myself. I'm going to jump. I'm going to hustle and make it work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it does fall into place. And yeah, like, if you talk through, my professional journey, which is, it's completely like a bloody maze. It makes no sense, but life doesn't make sense. So actually having that linear conveyor belt, actually, in my opinion, is not an accurate representation of life's kind of authentic approach. If you're going to be original, it's going to be random.
Yeah, and there's going to be ups and downs, but like you said, and that's the most important thing, you will make it work. Because you have to pay your bills and you have to pay your rent.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you can do that whilst being happy and fulfilled and doing something every day that makes you, brings you joy, then why not,
And the other way is, if you've considered both approaches in terms of the difficult journey, the chaos, and a conveyor belt, and you come back to the fact that the conveyor belt makes you happy, that's okay.
Yeah. 100%.
At least you've decided.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's nothing wrong with having that security and kind of, like you say, following that societal norm if you're happy. Like, I think it's just acknowledging that there is other stuff out there.
So another question that has just literally escaped my mind was around coaching. I've completely lost it. But no, I think we went on a slight tangent and I missed that. But in terms of your kind of, coaching going forward, I remember now, relationships.
Okay.
Big one, relationships.
Oh.
I know. We've talked a lot about, money, security, the job transition and stuff like that. Life coaching, I think, has a big part to play within how people, have friends, colleagues, romantic relationships as well. Like, from your perspective as well, like how has these, your learnings through relationships and your kind of career as a life coach, how has that helped? How can that help people?
Do you mean in terms of kind of my relationships, or
I mean, it depends. If you want to talk about your story, absolutely fine. But I mean, in terms of more general as well, because I know when people can make logical decisions in terms of work, but when romance happens, logic goes out the window. It's very irrational. And do you support people as a life coach in terms of the kind of relationship side as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think if it was purely around relationships, there are actually relationship coaches. And I know a few of them. So I think if someone came to me and we had like our introductory call where we established kind of what we're going to work on, and if it was specifically around relationships, I would probably refer them to a relationship coach, because that's not really my area of expertise. Whereas a relationship coach has got a lot more in their toolkit around things like masculine and feminine energy, and there's a whole world out there when it comes to relationships. So but interestingly, I think like when we have certain relationships and we want to take a certain path, I think it's just acknowledging people's opinions but not letting them influence us too much in terms of kind of having a romantic relationship. But it can be hard, can't it, I guess?
Yeah. And these, you know, a relationship, your relationships, your friendships, they're not separate from your job, or everything's intertwined. Like you're living this life, which frankly, for each of us feels like one river. You know, you can separate into strands, but it's not. It like you play your different roles every day. You know, I play a role of a husband, a dad, a cook, occasionally, a podcast host, a worker, whatever it is. And these roles, actually, they're all intertwined and they can impact off each other. So if relationship is being strained, for example, then that can have an impact elsewhere in your life, and distinguishing that and trying to make the right decision is very hard.
Yeah, for sure. And but I think definitely something I would always say is, I can't remember the quote off the top of my head, but basically if you matter to those people, whatever decision you make, they should support you. There's a few really good quotes around this, and and actually if someone's going to get in the way of you making a certain decision in life, are they the right person to be with? Hard truths to hear for some people, but absolutely, if you're wanting to go down a certain route or a certain path in life and that makes you happy, if there's someone getting in your way, you have to really kind of, and that would probably be something that I'd get a client to journal about, is okay, what is this telling you? Because if they love you and they care for you, then they should support you. Obviously, if you're going to go and rob a bank or something, then maybe, but these more general life choices, they should support you regardless.
And it's not about one person. You're not keeping score in a relationship. It's about supporting each other to be the best person that they can be. But intertwined with all of that are our own insecurities growing up, and our own need for validation, and all the complex stuff that frankly we don't really know about, but we just feel. It can be, and actually, like, to leave a relationship is very difficult if it's not right. I mean, it's like being on a conveyor belt. It might be okay, but it's not perfect. Okay, not perfect, it's the wrong word, but it's not the best thing for you. And that's really hard.
Yeah. And again, similar to what I was saying earlier, some people will wait for that catastrophic event to happen before they make that decision. Whereas how many years of your life are you going to waste waiting for that event to happen? Yeah. I think it's just that with all of this, it's very much around putting things into perspective for people.
Yeah, and you must feel like kind of an overwhelming weight of responsibility when you get a new client. It must be it must be really hard thinking, am I asking the right questions? I mean, do you doubt yourself at the same time and thinking, God?
There's always that element of, God, what question do I ask? Or how am I gonna? Because there's an element of steering, but there's not an element of steering. You shouldn't kind of ask leading questions. You should try it, but it can be hard sometimes to hold back what you kind of want to suggest, because you're not meant to suggest. But we're human at the end of the day, and we want to help these people. So there is kind of this internal battle of, okay, how do I phrase this question so that they can find the answer themselves?
Yeah.
Without me just kind of putting it on a platter.
do you find that like you know, I always found that going to see, let's say I went to see like a psychotherapist, you'd pay money to go and see them, and it's not cheap, right? You go and see a life coach and you're paying money to, it's an interesting concept that you're paying for something which is therefore what you could, in your mind, you might consider a service. Yeah. But actually what you're paying for is, it's almost acknowledging that you're paying for something that you can't do yourself. I ask those really hard questions. You can't journal your way out of this. You're going to need that kind of support that you can't find elsewhere. Yeah. And that's a difficult thing to acknowledge, I find, certainly.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the best analogy I can give to kind of anyone that's at that point is it's an investment in yourself.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't see it like that. But another analogy I use is that if we pay for an MOT on our car, we pay for a service on our car, yeah. We can get a new car if it breaks, but we can't get a new mind, body, you know. Yeah. So, you know, and if you go for an MOT and they phone you up and say, oh, you need this doing, and it's going to cost £700, well, you just do it, because you
just do it. Yeah. That's a really good analogy.
Like, you need your car, like, even if you don't, even if actually you could get the train somewhere, but you know, that's just how we are. But I think a lot of people don't realize that, and I preach a lot about self-care as well. A lot of people don't realize that you can't get another body, you can't get another brain, you can't get that is it. So and I think you either reach a point in life where you accept that investing in yourself is something you should do, or you don't. And
so talking about from that self-care perspective, there's a nice point to say. So from your perspective, like, what self-care do you do? Because you've obviously got a huge kind of bank of knowledge in terms of journaling, in terms of coaching, but what helps you keep positive, going from, to stop you going from below zero?
Walks, being out in nature, being outside, definitely. Having a bath, listening to music. For me, self-care is just taking time for myself. So doing something that makes me happy, just have, even if it's 10-15 minutes. Obviously I try to do more than that, but I've just discovered my watercolors, so doing watercolors, and I find when I do things like that, my mind goes completely blank, so it's very kind of therapeutic for me. But obviously journaling's big one, 100%. Painting, watercolors, cross stitch. I quite like my crafts.
But there's something about that, isn't there? Something about, you say painting, there's something about you're doing something that's outside of your head that can allow your mind just to calm down.
Meditation when I feel like I need it. I'm not like I don't meditate regularly. It is something I want to get into a bit more frequently, but it's more a case of, like, definitely when I feel overwhelmed or just in a bit of a funk sometimes. Just doing some meditation, or just sitting in silence with, I've got Insight Timer, which is an app, and they just have like meditation music. So sometimes I'll just put that on and I'll just shut my eyes for and I'll put a 5 or 10 minute timer on and I'll just sit there. Baths, nature, being out in nature, definitely. We hiked a lot during lockdown. Not so much this round because the weather's a bit crappy, but just getting outside and just I do definitely find that if I've stayed indoors for like a day or two, I'm like, oh my god, I need to get out.
Do you find that there's been an impact so different to lockdown in effectively summer, lockdown now? It's a winter, the seasons have changed. Do you find that affects you? Because I know it affects a lot of people.
So definitely, so I get the fatigue and kind of the lack of energy and the exhaustion kind of definitely in the winter months. So the last couple of years I actually went to the doctors, and it turned out I'd gone to the doctors basically on the same date 2 years in a row, because I was so exhausted and so to the point where I'd be like literally falling asleep just like randomly. And I think,
which is a trigger, right?
I think basically, and after doing a bit of research, they did my bloods and everything was fine.
Mm.
I think it's SAD, so seasonal affective disorder, but I don't necessarily get the down moods, but I definitely get the energy zap, the exhaustion,
Mm.
the fatigue, like very much so in the winter months. So yeah, I've definitely noticed that around lockdown 2.0. Definitely having to have naps.
Yeah, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? And I think this is the thing. Like, I think what you really you really point out is like, and all the things you list, like they're free, right? You know, and that's the best thing. Like yes, you can download an app, you can you can download a paid app, you can download a free app.
Yeah.
That's great, but go out for a walk, like go for a run, do some painting, whatever it's going to be. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but as long as it relaxes you, and you're the only person who's going to know what relaxes you, and your combination of hiking in nature, watercolors, and baths are going to be different to someone else's, but it's about finding what works for you. And I do agree with you. Like, we speak about this a lot, like just spend at least 10 or 15 minutes every day just doing those things. And if there's three things that always comes up in these conversations, it's meditation, breathing exercises, and gratitude journaling.
Oh yes, how could I get that one?
Yeah, but it's funny, but like gratitude journaling, like for me, I've definitely heard about it, like and you know, and I practice it to some degree. I was shocked about, I think we've done about 19 episodes now, of how frequently that came up. And doing that practice every morning was really important to a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. And I try to, I don't do it every day, but so I journal every day or every other day, depending on what's going on. But I probably 3 times a week, I definitely finish my journal entry with some sort of gratitude or affirmations or just something very, very positive.
Yeah.
And just starts my day off nicely.
I think like you're studying a master at the moment, positive psychology. Like there's a lot of things you can do to start your day in a positive way. And yes, the whole world might be crumbling, but there are little things you can do to make yourself feel good.
Yeah, you can find a positive in every negative if you look hard enough. I am a firm believer of that.
Yeah, I suppose
silver lining.
It's difficult, and I think, you know, I mean, what's amazing in hearing your journey as well is like during your furlough period, gave you the time and space to reflect, to walk, to cut, to paint, but also to plan your business. And you've, like you said, you're now full-time life coach as of, was it October?
October, yeah.
October. So, and how's it going? Like now we've brought up to date, like how's it going? Are you still feeling that kind of, are you in the honeymoon period? Are you excited? Is it, have you been overwhelmed? Because, you know, I know you're very popular in terms of your client base and also on Instagram as well. Like, is it working?
Yeah, I'm just happy. I had a peer, sorry, I can't get my words out. A couple of weeks ago, I was sitting there one evening and I was just sitting there reading a book, and I just kind of had this moment of, I'm really happy. Like, I made the right decision. I mean, don't get me wrong. So I took voluntary redundancy from my job, and it was offered out 3 times before I took it. Okay. So I was like, on the 3rd time, I was like, this is time. This is the universe saying, come on, here's an opportunity for you. Take it. Yeah. The first 2 times I wasn't ready. I was still kind of, my head was still in, you've got a job. This is just a passion you can do on the side. Yes, I always had a plan to leave my job at the end of this year. I actually have it written on a sticky note just up here.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I had planned to leave at the end of the year.
That was the vision.
That was the vision, yeah. And they offered out redundancy right at the beginning of COVID. So back in March, definitely wasn't even on the radar at that point. I was like, no, I'm not going to take it. It crossed my mind, but I was like, yeah, no. Second time, I was like, no, probably not, still not ready. And then the 3rd time, I was like, if I don't take it now, they might not offer it again. And this is an opportunity to go in, to leave with a bit of money as well.
Yes.
If I'd have left at Christmas, I would have left just and walked away.
Yeah.
So I just saw it as, the universe was saying to me, come on, now is your time. You've been able to spend this time and realize that this is your passion and this is what you want to do. And actually, I had a really pivotal moment. I don't know if pivotal is not the right word. I had a day basically where I went down to Brighton in, I think it was in September. It was really, we had really nice weather still. I went down and did some work from a co-working space down there. And then rather than coming straight back home, I got my lunch and I went and sat on the beach and I read my book and I paddled my feet in the sea. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, this is a life that I've now created for myself.
Yeah,
I hadn't left my job at that point. I think I'd potentially accepted the kind of leaving date and everything, but I was still employed and I was sitting on the beach and I was just like kind of like taking it all in, and I was like, this, you know, we create our own life. We are in control of our life, no matter what people kind of think. Ultimately we are in control of the decisions we make. Yes, there are some things that are out of our control, but we can control how we react and respond. But I just kind of sat there and I was like, wow, I'm really happy.
And that's what you want for everyone around you, don't you?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And that is my vision. And as you read right at the beginning, that is what I want to help people to do, is to realize that, you know, you can create this life, even if you feel stuck or you feel lost or you feel overwhelmed in life. With the right tools and the right guidance, you can make those decisions to make those changes in your life. Are you feeling familiar with Eckhart Tolle? Yeah. So in his book Power of Now, he talks about you have three options. You either remove yourself, I'll never get them right, you either remove yourself from the situation if you're not happy in it, you change the situation if you're not happy in it, or you accept it for what it is and you get on with your life. And I read that and I was like, that is so powerful. Like, you've either just got to, if you're not happy but there's nothing you can do about it, you've just got to wholeheartedly accept it and make peace with that.
Yeah. And I suppose with that peace comes happiness in a weird way.
Yes.
Because, and it's about those decision making. I think what's tricky, and especially with Eckhart Tolle, like, it's when someone is, because what your hope, like you said, you're getting someone, whether it's 0 to go up, when people are in an empowered state, i.e. they've taken action, they've come to see a life coach, they're like, right, I'm going to do this. Like, I think it's much harder when you are in a disempowered state. Your confidence is low, your self-esteem is low, perhaps a job has just crushed it out of you, like, or a relationship has crushed it out of you, like, or something has crushed it out of you. Getting to that point where you do have the ability and the confidence, like you said, to go, right, I'm going to do this, and the energy and excitement and the fear is actually a positive thing rather than a negative thing. And that's really empowering, and that's a really tricky thing. And I think you're right, it only happens within yourself.
Yeah.
And people can help that, but ultimately the choice is, do you want to be happy? And if you do, you got some hard work to do.
Yeah.
So do the damn hard work.
Yeah. And one of my favorite quotes is, happiness is an inside job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because and that this is one of my goals of my Instagram and my blog and my website, is getting people to that point where they realize that they're ready to make those changes. But there's a lot of work that comes before, and you almost have to take yourself on that personal development journey. No one's going to do it for you, but it's realizing that, okay, right, I'm going to buy the books, I'm going to read the books, I'm going to learn about how I can do what I need to do. But one of the things I want to achieve with my Instagram is giving that value and sharing those snippets that I've learned along the way, so that people can learn that and maybe have those light bulb moments and go, hold on a minute, you know, what can I do to make some changes and make myself happier?
And I think that's the beauty of the Instagram community. Like, there's a lot of negatives that say about social media, but actually, like, when it comes to well-being, mental health, like, there's some really cool kind of I suppose post creatives that can really trigger some quite powerful thoughts in you, and that you can download and carry around in your own little toolkit. And I know that us at Sidekick, I mean, we love what you do. Like, we often share what we do and talk about what you do, you know, throughout our community, because, you know, when someone is putting out that information, it's amazing how many people you can actually reach, and it can really have an impact on.
Yeah. And even if it just reaches one person, you know, as long as one person gets something from it, then you've done your job of sharing the value and sharing the information. And
I think you're, you know, just to conclude, what you talked earlier about investing in yourself. Like, we have something like 27,000 days on this planet. That's 75 years, right? Yeah. As soon as people hear that, they go, what? And the first few thousand, you don't remember. The last few thousand are pretty average, right? So you haven't got much time. Like, why would you invest in stocks and shares if you're not going to invest in yourself? Why are you going to invest in a car and a house if you're not going to invest in yourself? Like, surely invest in yourself, and then everything else will follow. You'll make better decisions. You'll be happier. Be positive.
Yeah.
It's But for me, it's a desperation. It's an urgency. It's like, come on, like, the time is finite. You've got to start now.
100%. Yeah, I could not agree more. And it is frustrating. You do get some people who just don't get it, and they don't believe that they have their choices, and they're in the fixed mindset, as I would say.
Yeah, because I remember that there was a post you shared recently, actually, about the kind of fixed and growth mindset. And what do you do when you come across someone with a fixed mindset? I was going to say, it's basically, is that what you do inside?
Yeah.
Right,
you just got to try and encourage them to understand how they are in control, and try to take examples from their life. It can be very hard though, but take examples where something negative might have happened, but how can they learn from it? How can they grow from it? Because someone in the fixed mindset will see a failure or a bad thing as that's it, that's happened. They can't move forward from it, or they can't learn from it. So it's just trying to shine a light on the positives that can come from a negative. Or give them homework to read. To Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. That's one. I don't know if you've read that one. Yeah. So just kind of try to open their eyes in a way. Yeah, it is hard though.
Yeah. And when it comes to fixed mindset, like, I always think of it as they're just deeply ingrained habits. But that's okay, because that's how people have grown up. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can change that. Yeah. And I think with hard work, someone with a fixed mindset has a deeply ingrained set of structures and habits that they can be unpicked. It is very hard, but if you do feel that, like you said, that sense that you're not happy and you want to be more fulfilled, then frankly, it's like you said, it's a good investment in yourself. Yeah.
And it's a journey, and life is a journey. And I'm full of quotes today, but I've seen one recently.
Good ones.
Life's a journey, not a destination. And I couldn't agree more. Like, you never get to the end point. You're always growing, you're always learning, you're always on this, but yeah, I think that's a really important message for people to understand, is that it's a constant journey. And if you're if you want it to be, a happy, fulfilled journey, then that's your responsibility and no one else's.
100%. You are fully accountable for yourself. Well, Carly, thank you so much for a fascinating, insightful conversation. You are very brave taking the jump. I remember when I took the jump. You are very brave, and we can only wish you well in your life coaching journey.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks. And thank you to everyone listening. You can subscribe to us on most major platforms: YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Just search for Sidekick Community or Sidekick Stories and we'll pop up. And please do give us a rating if you like the show. Carly, thanks so much again.
Thank you.
Cheers.